Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about the two wrongs make a right fallacy. This is essentially a form of whataboutism, which basically involves pointing at something else, something that someone else has done, and saying, well, what about what they did? It is a form of misdirection, right? It assumes that, so whataboutism in general assumes that if someone else has done a thing, regardless of how bad that thing is, it is therefore justified if I do this thing. Two wrongs make a right is essentially a variation of this that's slightly more focused on often morally indefensible things. So often this shows up in political rhetoric, because politicians often try and convince us that we should support them in doing things that, again, are morally indefensible, that there is no good reason why anyone should ever support those things being done for any reason. So, this is the basic logic. The two wrongs make a right. Basically, it allows someone to say, well, because this bad thing has happened, I should be allowed to do this bad thing. The death penalty is actually a really good example of this. The death penalty is a two wrongs make a right structure. X person has committed a murder, therefore we should, as a society, murder them. If the basic premise is that murder is wrong, it's hard to make a good argument that it then becomes morally defensible to kill someone as a punishment for that, right? Because that undercuts the idea that them killing someone in the first place was a bad thing. If we are now entitled to do a bad thing because they have done a bad thing, then we're still doing a bad thing, right? If killing someone is wrong, then we are still killing someone, even if they deserve it. And so this is part of the problem. Obviously, death penalty is much more complicated than that, and there are different perspectives on it, but that is the basic logic of we should kill criminals who deserve it. They have done a bad thing, therefore we should do a bad thing to them. The problem, of course, on an ethical level is that this does not increase the overall positiveness in the world, right? It doesn't, it's not good things. There's no good things that are coming out of that. Now, you could make an argument that, oh, well, the family of the victim will get some sort of satisfaction or something like this, but that certainly would be balanced out by the suffering of the family of the person being executed. And so again, you have two wrongs, two things that are ethically bad. And we see this in larger sort of scope as well, right? Like, one of the formative experiences of my young adulthood, unfortunately, was the War on Terror. And one of the arguments that was made for the invasions of Iraq and Afghanistan by the US and the coalition was, well, they oppress women. As if George W. Bush gave a shit about feminism. But that was one of the selling points used to try and convince people that it was okay if we overthrew governments, bombed civilian populations, destroyed the infrastructure that holds up entire societies, and destabilized an entire region in ways that 20-some years on are still having massively detrimental effects. We got to invade them because they were doing a bad thing. So we got to do an objectively bad thing in invading two sovereign countries, destroying their governments, killing massive and torturing massive numbers of their people, destroying their infrastructure of their society, etc., because it was justified by these bad things that they had done. And of course, in the case of Iraq, they had nothing to do with September 11th, which was the main driving force of the war on terror. They had no actual weapons of mass destruction in the way that the Bush administration claimed that they did, etc., etc. And so in that case, all of that was really built on, I mean, Saddam Hussein was not a good human being. Don't get me wrong. He was a horrible dictator. But saying because Saddam Hussein was a horrible dictator who oppressed his people, committed genocide against the Kurds, etc., etc., the U.S. is allowed or is justified to invade Iraq and kill large numbers of Iraqis against the will of the people in Iraq is absolutely ethically insane, right? It is, again, this two wrongs make a right mentality in which because someone else has done something bad, we're justified in doing something bad. And it amplifies the degree of badness in the world. Now, what makes the two wrongs make a right fallacy attractive rhetorically is this sort of idea of a cosmic justice. It is a penalty-based system often. The idea, again, this is the premise of the death penalty. You have killed someone, therefore you deserve to be killed. This is a fundamental notion of justice that goes back at least as far as the Code of Hammurabi. But again, it is compounding a bad thing with another bad thing. The other way that two wrongs make a right often works rhetorically is as a kind of justification for abandoning any notion of moral responsibility, right? Because if Saddam Hussein is doing terrible things, then the U.S. is justified in doing terrible things to stop him because that's what it takes to get the positive result, but also because the elimination of moral responsibility, or the abdication, more accurately, of moral responsibility on the part of Saddam Hussein somehow justifies the abdication of moral responsibility by the United States, right? So these are the problems with the two wrongs make a right fallacy. It is used to pretend that if something bad has happened, that wipes the slate clean in terms of whether or not someone has an obligation to act properly. And it's an ethically and practically slippery slope from there.